Human design is a part science, part spiritual system that tells you who you came here to be. You have your own blueprint, your own way of becoming successful, your own way your dreams are going to come true, the way you'll experience the most joy and fulfillment. The instruction manual for how to move through the world is custom to you. When you act according to that manual, when you act as the real you, everything in life comes to you with more ease and less resistance. We all know we're different, yet we're still acting like there's one way to do life. Let's talk about it. To find out your design and the designs of the people in your life, you can visit myhumandesign.com or download the My Human Design app in the App Store and on Google Play.
Today is a gift for me. This conversation is such a full circle moment because when I think about the people that have really changed my life or the course of my life in such a big way, my guest today is one of those people that I can count on one hand, and that is Natalia Rose. Natalia, I am so grateful, A, for your existence, but B, for your presence here today.
Oh, I feel the same way about you, Jenna. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with you today.
So, you and I, we both care about such similar things. And you said it right before we jumped on. I don't want to paraphrase it, but you said something about like the union with the divine, right? And that's why we do the work that we do. But I would love for you to talk about, how cleaning our bodies and creating these vessels, how that helps and what that does and what people can expect. Because I think that the promises of what we're told eating well are like the bar's so low. You know what I mean? Like people say muscle growth or better recovery or, weight loss. But I don't think that people really have been told that there's a way better payoff or a goal to be going for that we're just not being told until you came along. I had no idea that was a reason for doing all of this.
Yeah, so we're conditioned to think so little of ourselves and to not understand what we are. We're conditioned to poison ourselves. And in doing that, I think we have to start. There's a lot of things that need to be said and I no longer censor myself around these things. Not that I ever really did, but I think I was a little bit more careful in the past. Now it's just sort of like, there's no time for that.
Yeah.
We got to come back to what we are, who we are, with what we're doing here. So you use the word vessel, which is a great word. We're a holy temple, a vessel of the divine, and we're meant to be in constant union with the divine. So we have access to genius. Genius is simply that channel being open. It's that vessel being what it's supposed to be, which is a container of light, which is coming straight from the divine source and constantly conducting that energy. So we're taught from birth, well, in many ways you could say before birth, because we're conditioned and programmed through our DNA, and we have the inherited genes and all these things, and which is not just how things are going to show up later in your life in terms of diseases potentially, but of course, we know we can override them. We know about epigenetics, but it comes through our conditioning and programming. Literally comes through that as well. So it's not just how our physiological symptoms will express. It's literally how we'll come to shape the things we think about. So we are inundated with things that will shut down that temple, shut down that divine union from the get-go, from the moment we emerge, again, from before that, but let's just start with that for the sake. We're taking in, yes, physiological substances, but also non-physical substances that can't be seen with the visible eye, typically, that are coming in, and everything's just closing that, shutting it down, clogging it, blocking it. So if we want to truly live, to be fully alive and do what we were here to do, we need to remove all of that obstruction. And yes, the physiological obstruction is a huge part of that, but we don't stop there. The moment we make even a little bit of progress in removing the physical obstruction, all of the other faculties begin to come online too. The heart opens, the brain fog clears, the connections start to be made, and it's just the beginning. But even in the very beginning, the life experience is so radically transformed that you don't have to wait for it per se. Like it's not like we're going to wait weeks and months to have any results. It happens as you remove this. So in real time, you're opening up that channel. You're coming back into contact, back into your aliveness.
And I love that you mentioned that it doesn't have to be, 20 years down the line, it starts to happen, because you really do, just as you go, access new levels. So it's nice because it's a positive reward loop that is already starting to create, because I feel like the universe wants to make you keep going, which actually makes me want to ask you, are you still surprised, however many years you are? I mean, you're decades and decades into living a cleansing life. Are you still surprised by the new higher heights that come online for you?
Yes. And what I'll say about that is that there are elements of this life experience which I believe are set up to test us, to say, to give us experiences to see if we've learned the lessons we were supposed to learn, so that we can then graduate, let's say, to a next level. And whenever we talk about graduation and angles, it's all geometry, it's sacred geometry. To a graduated angle, angles are angels. I mean, everything is built in. It's all there. The Father, we say God the Father. It's Father. It comes from paternal, which is pattern. So it's all the sacred geometries. It's all music. It's all mathematics. It's all there. You can't separate them out. So this is where things get really exciting. But in order to graduate to more complex geometries of our being, to have greater organization. So think about from chaos, which is the world. I like to differentiate between the world and life, because people often use them
interchangeably.
And they're not actually synonymous. The world is the belief structures and cultural norms and the whole stage setup, let's say, of what we are told is normal and right. It's what shapes our belief system. But life is the indisputable, ineffable, glorious expression that we know it contains all of this mathematic, musical perfection, as well as beauty and everything else, and it's constantly evolving. So what life does is life is on a syntropic. So there's entropic, which is when things fall apart, but it's a syntropical upward spiral where, when life is well served, it reaches higher and higher orders. So greater geometries, more complex, not complicated. Chaos is complicated. Order and life is complex. So it reaches higher and higher orders. But as we do that, as we have to reshape ourselves, we take on higher patterns, it can feel uncomfortable in those moments. When you're going from a square to a dodecahedron, there are going to be a lot of levels within that. So if you think about it that way, you're like, okay, well, I need to then, there's a change of shape that's going to happen. And so that's when a lot of people stop and get stuck. They think it should be easy. They think it should all be, just sunshine and rainbows. And actually, it calls upon us to galvanize our most, our deepest resources to get to that next stage or graduate to that next plane and pattern. So it's in those moments when I want to tell anyone who's going through, because you'll go through many of those moments if you're doing this work properly, because you're releasing the things that keep you in old patterns. You're going to have to, in order to become that a more alive self, you're going to have to let go of a lot of things, because they're not going to let you go there. There's no way that pattern can take shape if those things are trying to be taken with it. And that's where that's the unnecessary struggle. So there's the necessary effort that we have to put in to acknowledge, to witness what needs to go, to know what is not going to be present, and work for that higher organization. You can hear organ, it's all there. Even orgasm, it's all there, because it's the life force. So when those moments happen, I know it can be very hard, but to let go of those things that are keeping you from that higher pattern, if you really want to get. So it's not like, do this and everything's easy. It's like, do this because if you want to reconnect and live your highest experience and expression, then you're going to need to. It's a requirement. But don't look at it as if it's just hardship with no reward. The reward is there, but we're then given, that's why it's a reward. It's like, you've done this. So I have experienced huge levels of upgrades, but they've always come with a huge challenge, a huge testing. And, so it's what, at least I know when tests show up, I can feel into them. I
Yeah.
see what's happening. And then it's like, oh, well, this is great, because we all know that we're not going to get stronger if we don't do something that requires us to get stronger. You're not just going to have strength. If you don't do the push-ups and the pull-ups and you don't, you don't push yourself a little bit, maybe whatever it might be. For someone, it might be just, getting on the yoga mat. Another person, they're a dancer. We know that we don't become better and stronger and more adept and more capable of actually helping others until we've cleared these things ourselves. And most people, they're very excited. They'll often say, I get this all the time, like, I just want to help other people. But they don't really want to do the hard work themselves. I liken it often to cleaning your closet. It's really easy to organize someone else's closet, but most people really avoid, like the plague, organizing their own. So anyway.
I love that you say that, because what I'm understanding as you're saying that is that there is no escaping the sort of innate mechanism that there are always going to be tests and they are here to push you to higher levels. But the way that the approach that you take allows you to understand what they are and, like you said, feel into the energy. And then it's not throwing you into any unnecessary chaos and panic and all those things, other than like exactly just like sort of facing it like a trained warrior almost. And so I would love for you to share with our audience, because I think one of the core principles that I understood from your work, I mean, it's so layered and so deep and so many facets to it, but one of the core principles, and I think this is like the thing that just frees up so much struggle around how to look after yourself, is it's less about what you're putting in and it's more about all the stuff you're leaving out. So I would love for you to expound upon some of that for us.
That's perfect, Jenna, because it's exactly, it's a perfect segue given what we've just been talking about. So if everyone who's listening can just imagine for a moment that they come into this world, this glowing, beaming vessel of life force. And with all the connection, we have the fontanelle, and when we're born, the fontanelle closes up. Imagine you just have this perfectly open vessel with divine, and then everything gets put into you. The television show, the media, everything, all the cartoons you watched. I mean, I love the exercise of recapitulation. So you have to recap everything that was put into you, everything you saw, whether it was, inharmonious relationships that you witnessed in your home, or it was the things that you saw on television, or music. Music has these messages embedded in them, like hugely. There's so much of this programming that's in music. And think about programming as like the flicker rate. So when it's a kind of a hypnosis, and you have it in music, you have it in anything you're watching, that's going into your, really programming your mind. So all of those things, all the conditionings are more like the things that your family and your culture believed in, that you adopted. So all of that, everything that's not you, but you began to identify with it because it was poured into you, you believed it. It's, Bruce Lipton famously established this idea that the first 7 years of life, we're getting all this. I mean, that the Jesuits were talking about it as well, back in the day, give me a child for 7 years, I'll give you the man. But so those first 7 years, like what went in, what you ate, what you drank, what you were exposed to, who your friends were, what your parents, like every influence you had in the first 7 years, that goes into our subconscious. And so we're not aware of it, but we're operating from that place. So imagine if you weren't filled up with all that, who and what would you be? So just going back to your question, when you realize just how much, and remember that that's all acidic. We talk about acidic and alkaline. So acidic substances, they stick in, whether it's in the human tissue. If you're eating acidic food, it sticks in the tissue and creates blockages and accumulation. If it's acidic thoughts, acidic feelings, acidic exposure, it's going to stick in you. Whereas alkaline substances, whether they're alkaline feelings or alkaline foods, they actually bring the life force and they conduct, they don't stick, they just deliver energy and they keep on moving. And remember, we know from Taoism that flow is everything. So the alkaline substances maintain and support flow, the acidic ones prevent it. So all this stuff goes in and it sticks. Now, if we're looking to be more alive, does it seem, and this is of course a rhetorical question, but does it seem like it makes more sense to put things into the body to fix it, or to remove everything to fix it? And that's when it's like, oh, okay, well, so what's a superfood going to do? What are all these supplements going to do? What's the powders? And what is all that going to do if we are stuffed up like at Build-A-Bear, they have this, I don't know if you know Build-A-Bear if you have kids, but like, you get the bear and then you stuff it and stuff and stuff it. Like, we need to unstuff. I call it the great unstuffing. We've been stuffed up, like, and when they think about the things that get stuffed up, think about, stuffed animals, taxidermy. They stuff you up and they put the formaldehyde in you before they put you in the ultimate box, the coffin. It's like, let's just stuff it. Because if we stuff it, we silence its ability to be sovereign. It silences its ability to have power. So that's how we're controlled, is simply by this seemingly innocuous thing called eating and receiving. So we're quietly allowing ourselves to be stuffed up like the frogs in the proverbial boiling pot. And then we don't even know what's happened to us. And then it's too late.
Right.
The emptying. So then it becomes a process of recapitulating, realizing just how much went in, and then making every effort to release it. And there's a process for that, of course, both a physiological process and a process for the psyche and everything to release that. But that's what we want to focus on. And the beauty of it is that doesn't require going out and, spending a lot of money and buying a lot of things. It's simple. We're talking about reflection. We're talking about water to cleanse the colon. We're talking about, yes, we want to have green juices, and those aren't expensive either, or complicated. You can get romaine lettuce and cucumbers and make your green juice. And it doesn't require all these different things. There are a few gadgets, that can be helpful, like a juicer. Obviously we need a juicer, but it streamlines the whole process and it becomes an emptying out rather than what can I put in to fix this?
Right. I think a lot of the times the ego or the conditioned mind hates the simplicity of it. But my God, I mean, you have, if I can just, say, you have the most radiant, not only skin and hair and eyes, but also energy. And, you use the least amount of products out of anyone I know. You have 1 or 2 face oils. You don't use a single supplement. And I know that that's sort of normal if you're in your world and the world that, I'm now included in as part of your journey. But can you sort of, I guess, give some relief? It's almost like to get off this hamster wheel that the thing that's going to fix me is whatever the trend is of the colostrum or the 30 grams of protein every day and whatever. I feel like, and to paraphrase it in your words, you once said, it's like it makes you less powerful. Like all of that stuff is taking away your power. So, and I love the way you speak about power. So in this context, I'd love to hear just this such basic explanation of why being on that sort of consumption is actually taking us away from our power.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the power in its simplest explanation is life force. It's the source from the force of the source. And that's, we're literally just meant to be vessels of that. And we have our unique, let's say, pattern, our father pattern that gifts us, and going back to human design, we know that we each have unique gifts, such specific unique gifts. So we are all supposed to be so different. But it's like, if you think about it in a way, it's like the geometry. It's like we all have our unique geometry, and you think about the fingerprints, And so in that, if our vessel is clean and clear, that gets to express almost like a projector hitting the screen that is a clean screen. Imagine that the projector is hitting a screen and it's full of all this rubbish. You don't actually get to see the picture. So we're actually missing out not only on our own picture, but all the pictures we get to see in the glorious brothers and sisters of life around us. We're missing that. So let me just go back to your question, which was, forgive me.
Just the rampant the idea that consuming more is what I guess we get sold it as if it's going to make us feel better, but actually it's only, if you look at it evidentially, it really only does make you feel worse.
Right. Yeah. So it's and it's like you said, it's our, it's hard to get our heads around it because we're so conditioned otherwise. But the only way to really believe it is to have the visceral experience of it. You know, if hopefully something in the logical mind will pick up on the resonance, like the antenna will go, wait, that actually does sound like it makes sense, because what is all this stuff out there for? And there's always, it's always about trends, and, you know, one year it's chia seeds, next year it's noni berries, next time it's colostrum, then it's, you know, the coffee with the oil, and so these things, they all come and go, because ultimately what's not being dealt with, and maybe we just delve into the depths of this now. What's not being dealt with is the rot. Because what the acidic substances do is, in staying in the body and sticking in the body, not only are the substances themselves rotting, but they're preventing the flow of your cells and tissues. So they're causing your body to become necrotic slowly but surely. So ultimately, I think if I'm going to be just really, really direct to answer this question, it's only by removing the rot is anyone ever going to get better. So, and the good news is that by removing even a little bit of the rot, you feel so much better. So once that visceral experience occurs, there's no stopping anyone who really wants to heal themselves. And the beauty of it is that, unlike things, you know, like this couch or my computer, these things will all experience entropy. They're all going to fall to chaos, to disorder. They're in the highest integrity they're ever going to have, because they're not alive. I mean, you can say that there's some element of life in everything, but we're talking about the life force conducting. We are living tissue. So everything in our physiological makeup is spirited. It has an aliveness to it. So if we just create the conditions for that aliveness to come back online, it will do so. We're not stuck where we are. We're not in a state where we peak at 30 and then suddenly we're in decline. That's cultural programming. That's actually erroneous. We decline because we accumulate so much rot in the first 30 years. There's nothing to do but decline, because what's rot going to do? So we need to actually take on a word, one of my favorite words in the English language, incorruptibility. And for most people, it sounds very lofty, because, again, we've been so dumbed down. We've been made to believe that we're, you know, just, you know, people will refer to their bodies as meat suits, and, you know, and they have this idea of you know, they may know that there's this assembly line life where you give all your years to work and school and then you die, but it seems to be still acceptable in most people's minds. So in effect, there's our true potential is rarely, if ever, seen. I mean, maybe some of the masters in the Himalayas or something we hear legends of, but ultimately we can only find out what our true potential is by removing the rot. With rot present, and where else in life does anyone think rot is acceptable? You know, we have our infrastructures and all our cities are built around making sure that there's, I mean, the removal of the garbage is the most essential priority. I mean, we know what happens if that piles up. So why is that never addressed in the body? Well, mostly because we're made to believe, I call this the invisible elephant in the room, we're made to believe that what we consume gets digested, assimilated, and eliminated. And that's the original lie. That's that's us getting stuffed up. So if we don't stop that lie, then we're going to be stuck and stuffed, and the rot is going to accumulate. But the good news of all this, even though that sounds hard to hear, is that we can remove that rot very directly, very efficiently. And once we do that, the rest of the non-material rot can start to move out too.
Yes. And I think that is, I'm so happy that you pointed that out, because that's the real aha. I came to this work. I don't know if we've ever spoken about this, but I came to this work because when I was a teenager, I had horrible acne. And I don't just mean like a couple of spots now. I mean, I used to have to go and get facials just for my back. It was so bad. I would hide in nightclubs when the people used to get sprinklers, like, because you could see even below all my layers of foundation. And I tried absolutely everything, literally everything, all the creams, all the pills, everything had such bad, side effects from those things. And then a friend of mine, my best friend actually, gifted me a book which was called The Hay Diet, and it was about food combining. It's like a very old book. Anyway, something about it made sense to me. It was like a very super old, like maybe even 100 years old type of thing. And it was literally just about splitting your starches and your proteins, and just it kind of stopped there. But once something clicked for me in there, then I found my way to I think it was your first book, The Raw Food Detox Diet, right? And essentially following this exact principle, which is that no, it's not everything in moderation. The brownie, the crisps, the potato chips, your body doesn't know how to get rid of it. And so it does, the residue of what that creates and the energy of it stays inside your body until you actually have to, you're eating unnatural foods, you have to kind of engineer them in a very beautiful way to come out because your body doesn't know what to do. And that is literally how I cleared my skin. And so, I mean, that was when I think I was 18 years old or 19, something like that. But what I think is so amazing about your work and what you said about it being visceral is that, you know, even if you get a man who doesn't believe or want any desire to, you know, lose weight or have glowing skin or any of those things, you give them one food combined meal and then you give them a non-combined meal, for example. And it's an actual experience. And so me coming in for thinking I was getting acne, I noticed such a levity in my mood that I almost didn't realize. And I think you've spoken about how your early years were sort of quite heavy and tough as well. But the levity that I experienced of not feeling like life was so hard because I felt so kind of, like you said, stuffed up, so suppressed. Like that's the only instrument that I could experience life through, right? Like if this is the speaker, like everything that was coming through the speaker was just horrible and muffled and dense and hard. And I just felt like I had no choice but to feel that way. And I think that's what really hooked me into this work because, you know, if it was just for the skin, at some point I would have probably been running around town doing 200,000 treatments. And like you said, the amazing thing is I haven't gotten a facial in, years, like literally years. And the same thing for all these things that are so costly in money, but also in time. And so you do have all this time to actually just enjoy being alive and feeling the world around you, but also having a sort of like a light mood inside of you. And so I really want to just highlight for people that it isn't like when we get told everything in moderation or when we get told, well, you just let it all out, you're right. Like that is the first lie, is that the life that we're living now is so entirely unnatural. And, you know, when people say like, oh, even things like meat, for example, I was reading a study, I don't know if you ever come across this, where they were saying, well, yeah, we've always eaten animal protein, but it was usually like bugs or crickets, or, you know, you would eat like a large animal like once a year on the holiest day as a sacrifice type of thing, right? But, you know, 3 times a day for every single day, like my parents didn't even grow up with that. That was a luxury, right? So I really think it's so freeing though, because it means like, oh my gosh, you get your time and attention back from having to, this idea of I just need to learn this one new way of eating and then I'll be fine. And I think about you and how much peace you have inside your, you know, every time you do an Instagram story, you're just so centered and at peace. And I'm like, that's the goal, is to be so unshackled by the lies. Yeah. So I want to ask you about when you first came to this work, what were the main things, the main sort of, aside from it's about removing things, I think the sort of 3 core tenets, if I may, and you can correct me, but I think the 3 core tenets of cleaning that vessel are eating sort of light to heavy, well combined meals, having a juice every day, and colon cleansing. So can you explain why those 3 work in such beautiful symphony together, like the roles they all play sort of interchangeably and how they actually make each other better?
Yes, and you've nailed it. Those would be the top 3. Absolutely. And by the way, I'm so happy that you were liberated from that, those symptoms, because I mean, you know, they were just, the body was screaming to find release, and it's all about that release and relief, and to that end also the ease that comes with it. That's the sign that you know you've gotten there. There are many signs, but that's a big one, because you actually feel a sense of ease within you. And that's just something that, we all deserve to feel. All right. So those three things and how they work in symphony together. What good food combining does is it relieves the digestive system. So when someone, for example, eats a flesh with a starch, which is not a good combination. So say a turkey sandwich or chicken and rice or steak and potato, that meal is going to take upwards of 8 hours to just leave the stomach. Forget about the rest of the intestinal tract, just the stomach. And that meal does not have a lot of water content. So we talked about how things stick in the body. The less water content a food has, the more inclined it's going to stick in the body. And I'm going to add this, it's a little bit more of an advanced concept, but just to take it because it's coming through, is that the body will use its own water stores to have to manage the depletion of water that results when one consumes dry food. And this is why domesticated animals, get the diseases that we humans do because of all the dry food too. And of course, they're eating GMO food and other reasons as well. But the dehydration, our bodies are supposed to be somewhere around 75% water, but we can't say that today for modern people because that water, what they've put into their human real estate is dry. And then that is having to be irrigated by the little stores of water that are left. So the dehydration is not going to be fixed, nor is it caused by a lack of drinking water. The 8 glasses of water a day that we're told to drink, first of all, it's never going to replicate the internal waters that the body has. It's never going to get to the large intestine where it's mostly needed. And the chronic dehydration is going to remain. So this is like the supplements. You're not taking things in. We're not going to fix the problem by trying to put in more of what seems to be the issue. For example, eating more fiber. That's another thing we're told to do. Eating more fiber is not going to fix the problem. We don't need more mulch. We don't need more stuff in the body. We need to remove that, which is already stuffed up. So when you ease digestion, when you turn a meal like an 8-hour meal into a 3 to 4 hour meal, like you have, I'm talking to everybody out there right now. If you're eating chicken, if you're eating rice, if you're eating turkey, if you're eating bread, fine. Just don't eat it together. Mm-hmm. So chicken and a salad, or chicken and vegetables, so no starch, or fish and vegetables, or a steak and vegetables. So just the flesh. I like to say flesh because protein is also really poorly used and circulated because, protein is amino acids, which are found, you don't have to have an animal flesh. So flesh is specific. That meal, a flesh with a vegetable, is going to require between 3 to 4 hours in the stomach. That's just the stomach again. But imagine two things. One, imagine how much less time the body's going to have to be working on that meal. And then imagine if you have a progression, I should say, of your intake in the day, and your first or second meal takes 8 hours and your next one's bumping into it, then what happens? You just have a fermenting mess all day long, lifelong fermenting mess. So if we can get the one meal out of the stomach before the next one goes in, hooray, we've just done something, wildly successful. If we can keep that happening, we'll continue to, and then anyone who's constipated, they'll find their movements get so much better because everything's not backed up. You're not trying to digest, and then, so the basic food combining rules, and that might be something to leave for another conversation, but the basic food combining rules enable that to occur. And that's ease of digestion. Not only does it mean that you're going to digest better and have less digestive issues, but it means that the body, which is always trying to triage, your body is always trying to fix everything. The internal intelligence system is trying to get the job done. The cultural ways of life prevent it from actually being able to accomplish much, which is why all this degrading happens to the body. But since it's always trying to triage, if we're always consuming things and the things we're consuming are so hard to break down, it's going to be pouring critical energy into doing things that there's better use of its time. Mm-hmm. For example, regenerating organs, dealing with the waste that's already in them, cellular turnover, getting rid of zombie cells. I mean, there's so much else that the body could be doing rather than this. So when you properly combine your foods, you get to allocate all that energy to something that's much more valuable. So there's a lot of reasons to properly combine, but there are a few of them. And then, and so that at the core, it's like, let's make everything run more smoothly. Then the green juice element is our way of getting huge amounts of life force, of vitality, of alkalinity into the body. So alkalinity is negatively ionically charged. What that does is it acts as a soap in the body. All that stuff that's starting to stick, it starts to loosen it up. You would never clean anything, whether it's in your home or your car or your clothes, your sheets, anything, with just water or just soap. You have to have both. The soap lifts the debris, the stuff up out of the tissue of the fabric or off of the glass or whatever it is, and the water washes it away. So the green juice acts as the soap. It's like a solvent, lifting up all this grossness that's would otherwise be in our tissues. It's bringing it up. But then we can't just lift it up and not get it out. It's like that's just soap with no water. Then we need to engage colon irrigation to remove all that waste that gets lifted up and ready for release. And that's what really make progress. So the green juice, think of it as a soap. The colon irrigation aspect is the water to wash away what you've prepared for release. And then the food combining is enabling digestion to be eased so that everything can be done much more efficiently, effectively, and and bring just the most remarkable results. It's a great little trio there.
And that's why, you don't then have to put the effort towards all the skin creams, because that energy that you freed up can go towards doing all that stuff that it naturally knows how to do and wants to do anyway. And you will find, and you've said this many times as well, is that because the body is self-regenerating, there's no reason why you can't look younger as time goes on. I remember in one of your books, I forget which one it is, but you said something so profound to me about pregnancy. Not to me, but in the book. You said something so profound about pregnancy, which is you've channeled all this life force in through your body into the world. There's no reason why you shouldn't be more juicy and alive and vibrant and thriving after pregnancy. So, even though I've never had a child, I've kind of taken that idea and that concept of course, the more time you have spent investing in your aliveness, that must be compounding.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're shepherding golden light through your body, so you should be. Yeah.
Go on.
No, and yet, we so many women are afraid of getting pregnant because of what they might do to their body. And then you have other women who aren't getting pregnant because of what's been done to the body. So the let's say the generation of life has been so misconstrued because of, again, this original error.
And actually, funny enough, the timing is perfect because you just did just sharing with our audience, you have an amazing membership app. I mean, there's an entire universe of Natalia content to consume. But in your membership app, you do these sort of live calls. And the recent one was about hormones. And it was such a good reminder of basically what you're saying now, which is that, fix one problem, you fix them all. And the solution is the same. So it doesn't matter whether it manifests as Hashimoto's or acne or infertility or whatever, because the principles is the same. And so then what's amazing about that is then you don't have to be taking your pills for this and you're doing your thing for that and your whatever the other things are, and you're just, cleaning your vessel. So I also, on that note, want to ask you about the sun, because I think that's one of the other big misconceptions about the primary health factors that, when you reframe it through this lens of your consciousness and the way that you understand life force, again, it's one of those things where you just instantly get it and it changes everything.
Sure. Okay. Yes, this is a big one. So essentially, the sun is not just some ball of fire in the sky that's keeping time for us. The sun is, talk about those patterns, those geometries, the magic of life that is coming through the sun. So it's better to think of it as, well, I'm not saying that, but I would suggest thinking about it in terms of infinite intelligence, the God force, the supreme creator energies coming through, delivering life, pouring life into planet Earth, into our ionosphere and all of these layers of atmospheric, that bubble that we're dwelling in. And it's just generating life, bringing life. So what needs to be clarified is that if the body's blocked, two things happen. One is that the body becomes, the body and the sun can't engage the way they were designed to. And so the reaction to the sun is not a favorable one. So in the modern person, the reaction to the sun is usually getting burned. And I'm not suggesting, by the way, that people go into the sun in their current state and go and bake themselves and to receive the infinite intelligence. There is an approach to this, a logical approach I'll get to, but they'll have a negative reaction in that sense. And then the sun is the most powerful magnet we have any concept of. It's the greatest magnet. It's going to pull. It's not trying to hurt people. It's pulling that which is toxic within them to the surface. So if there's a resultant skin cancer, it's not necessarily that the sun has damaged the surface, creating cancers. It's that the sun, and that can happen. Again, toxic people in the sun, it's not a good combination. But the majority of the time, what's happening is the sun is actually pulling the deeper toxicity in the person to the surface, not expecting to meet with humans that are so toxic. It's just doing its life-generating thing, which is intelligently trying to remove. If there was nothing so toxic to pull to the surface to remove, then it wouldn't happen. So the way if you want to start taking advantage of the sun and getting into sync with it, the first and most important thing to do is start cleansing the body. Because people often say, "Oh yeah, well I've tried sunbathe and stuff. It's not working for me." But have you cleansed yet? Have you? And cleansing is literally getting that accumulated waste matter out of the body. So as you do that, your relationship with the sun will change. You again, safe sun hours. The sun is powerful, depending on where you live in the world. I lived in South Africa for 8 years. I know the sun is very strong there. It's really strong here in Florida. Then I've got my friends in the UK and other places complaining that there is no sun. So, and I wouldn't want to be in that situation myself. It's tough because the sun. I mean, we are people of the sun, and I think we're designed to live in the sun. But in any case, cleansing the body is a prerequisite, and as you do that, you'll find that your relationship is different. I used to burn to a crisp before I started cleansing. I would really get lobster-like. And it would have aged me. It would have caused all sorts of cosmetic and probably deeper issues. I would never be able to live the way I do with the sun as a daily engagement, a spiritual and in every way, just like a huge part of my sense of being alive.
Yeah.
So those are the main prerequisites: is to clean the body, then be cautious with the sun as you engage with it. I always wear a straw hat or a cap because even though, I like my body can take a lot more sun than my face can. So I just don't see the point. We never want there to be too much of anything. And I find that I know exactly how much my body can take, and my face, I tend to like to just shield. And that also feels very intuitive to me. So, I can't give you a scientific explanation for that, but it just feels right. And
And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think anything that is truly natural, if it feels good to humans, we're probably designed to be drawn to it. And, here in Ibiza, the second the sun's out, you see people in droves just flock to the beach. And, you're going to be able to share with our listeners so many more things that it does. But even just the way that it relaxes your body, all the chemical reaction that it's doing for you, like, I think of the sun as our primary food, and there's breath and there's water and there's sun. And I always think of like trying to feed my body with those three things before I put anything in with, that is more concrete or dense. And funny enough, I'm sure everyone has had this experience where if you're in the sun all day, you naturally are just not as hungry. So that's an easy way to think about it. Like, because the sun is feeding you all this stuff that, you explained in one of your books that what we're eating, that's when we're eating things that are good for us, they are just sunlight in foods. So getting it from the sun is like sort of straight from source. But so can you, if someone says, but the sun ages you, what do you say to how it's not meant to age you? It's that we're getting it wrong, right?
We're getting it wrong, and we're not developing a relationship with it. So, for example, when I go into the sun, I'm purifying my field. I know that the sun will clean anything. Like you can literally put your clothes in the sun to clean them. There's like it will disinfect anything. I mean, if someone had a really bad issue in their mouth, for example, I would suggest opening their mouth and for a long enough time, and literally letting the sun go into the mouth. Obviously, you do the other things too, and whenever there's a symptom anywhere, it's the purification of the body that has to happen. But the sun will help. It's going to disinfect. It's an antibacterial, it's antifungal, it's anti-entity. So, if someone is in front of a computer for many hours, or working in a job with, like in a building or in a mall, or a place where maybe, especially doctors and teachers working with lots of people, giving a lot of energy, being around sick people, these sorts of, go into the sun and let all the incoherence that may enter the field, even just on a busy day, sitting in traffic, going to work, all the concerns you have, that if you consciously acknowledge that the sun is relieving you of that incoherence, that's what's actually happening. So there's so many levels, of course, for our vision. Light therapy is a big thing right now, and I think it's great. I think light therapy is wonderful, but don't forget that the sun is light therapy, and it has the whole spectrum in it. So, anything that red light can do, the sun can do. Mm-hmm. But we have to acknowledge that if we want to make sure that the sun doesn't damage us, we have to purify internally. We can't just say, oh, that's great, let's go bake in the sun. That's a very black and white interpretation of it. Not right.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that as well, because I mean, I'm brown sort of skinned anyway, but I think about the one time in my life where I burned. I was actually in California, and I sort of at the time I thought it was the sort of thin ozone layer there. And I've been in, the Maldives and 40-degree heat in Dubai and never ever burnt. And I was in California one time and I burnt, and it was only 20 degrees centigrade. And I thought to myself, what on earth is going on? And I do think there's something going on there in the atmosphere and whatever. But also when I think back to it, I was 5-6 months off of a breakup. And that was probably the time when I was still eating very clean, but I was definitely consuming more, as a way to not feel. I was still eating green juice. I was having my green juice. I was still eating fruit, like all those things. But the sort of energy and intention behind why I was choosing to ever pick up a piece of food and have it was different. And I only made that connection recently of, I think we also get told, and this is a massive other lie we can kind of demystify, which is that, you want to stay full, it's things that stick to your ribs and you want to whatever. But the sort of experience is that the less you stuff, the less at the mercy you are of, always having to fill yourself up. Otherwise, God knows you're going to be like shaky and you need to be eating unless you're, I think what most of us call full not hungry is a lack of fullness, right? Whereas a true hunger is such a different thing. And that's really something that has only kind of, I understood when you wrote about it, but it's really sort of like only truly landed recently. From reflecting back on that time when I was just so starving for something emotionally that wasn't food, and then realizing, hold on a second, I'm just full all the time. You know what I mean? And it starts to feel sort of abrasive inside you. It's like sandpaper inside, and you just feel more irritable, and it actually wasn't helping at all. It's probably making the thing worse because, those emotions were kind of getting, chortled in, right? Mm-hmm. But it is interesting, that connection I made about the sun, because I haven't really burnt since.
There's a lot that you've said there that there's so many different directions to go in. But I want to say two more things about the sun, and then talk about the fullness. So if you remind me, if you'd be so kind, I'll try to remember. But
okay.
So basically, there's a reason I believe that we are being directed to stay out of the sun, and And I don't think it's for our highest good. I think it's because there's such an enormous amount of ascension energy coming through the sun. So if we are communing with the sun, and then we're receiving codes, light codes, that will empower us into our truth and give us information that will, you certainly couldn't learn it any other way. It's coming into literally when you absorb the sun's energy, the sun's knowledge, the information is going into your blood, sacred blood. You're absorbing it. You're literally taking this on. And, when we read a book, we absorb what's in the book. When we hear a song, we absorb the music. When we're taking in the sun, we're absorbing the infinite intelligence. So is it possible that it's making us more brilliant, literally? Is it possible that it's giving us cosmic codes that then will be received and integrated into our DNA? Is this part of the way that we evolve? Is this part of the way that the heavenlies communicate with us? I think so. So I'm not going to prevent that from happening, because that I'm on that trajectory, and I find that time spent in the sun is really has been critical to my own evolution, and I do it in a way where I'm and I have the luxury of doing this now. Like I have a beautiful lawn where I can sit in the grass or on the grass and really be grounded when I receive the sun. So it's ceremonial, as opposed to the way I was raised, going back to California days when it was like how tan can you get? How can it was all about being cute and being pretty and being tan, and which is also kind of ironic because there's the spray tan and then there's the ray tan. So I like the ray tan, but it's so much more than that, and that's why I also always have this internal giggle when people say, "Oh yeah, you need to get your vitamin D. The sun has vitamin D." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Vitamin D? Come on, it's so much more than that. We're talking about cosmic consciousness." So that's one thing, and then the other aspect is with this stuffed upness is that we, in order to receive those higher frequencies, we have to have periods where we're empty, and it's also kind of humility, which is why I think that all the ancients will tell you, when they wanted to have higher contact with consciousness, fast and pray. We're always told the same thing. So the humility isn't so much I put this. It's the acknowledgement that not my surface mind will be done, but that the higher will be done. And that puts us in much greater alignment to receive that. So if we're always filling up, we're serving the surface mind, which is like serving the lower realm. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't eat, and we shouldn't have times when we get to enjoy that satiation, have a couple of baked sweet potatoes and some steamed broccoli and, whatever makes you feel satiated. But there should be moments where we feel our innate goodness and connection in the emptiness, because we have to be able to receive. If we're always full, we're never going to be able to receive. So creating the space for that. And I feel like humanity is inching toward that understanding with the intermittent fasting. At first I was like, oh gosh, intermittent fasting, that's going to be scary, because all these people who are doing it are they have all this toxicity that they're going to awaken, and it's not going to leave. And because, if you're smart with fasting, you're going to make sure that you're irrigating your colon to release all that you're awakening with the fasting. But even the fact that people are beginning to catch on to the fact that you're not going to, drop dead if you don't eat a couple of meals, and that there's something to feeling that emptiness, and that the body does good things when we're not full. Those little connections are starting to happen. I feel like we're living in such a remarkable period right now. And I see the awakening happening like popcorn popping. It's just happening.
Yeah. It's it's part of the curriculum, and we're all on it. Whether we like it or not, it's happening to us, and then it's just how we respond to it. But it's such a beautiful time to be alive. But my God, is it made better when you understand I don't want to say rules of the game, when you understand the sort of mechanisms of how things work, and there is such a freedom to, it's not about doing more and consuming more and getting more and buying more and achieving more. It's, and this is where our work is so aligned. It's in the deconditioning. It's in removing everything that is not you, whether that is physical or conscious or subconscious or mental, spiritual, so that you can then, just be a pure channel. Like things come through you that you're not even aware of where they came from. And it wasn't you that said it, because your mind wasn't that smart. And this is why I'm so just like deeply grateful to share, and I'm telling people like this, what we talked about today is literally scratching the surface, because you genuinely have a whole entire universe of, deep dive rabbit holes to go into your work on. But just to have this, like the same way that human design frees you from hamster wheel spirituality, what you do frees you from hamster wheel wellness and health and nutrition and sport and the entire thing. I mean, we could do a whole podcast about exercise and working out and all the myths around that and all the stuff you've helped me understand on that level too. And so anyway, there's a ton of things. I also want to say, especially even if you're like a seasoned Natalia person, don't sleep on, you're going to have to tell me the name of it, but it's like a free little ebook that you have on your website. And it's all about like life and how it regenerates itself and how life begets life. I'm paraphrasing it, but do you know the one I'm talking about?
An ebook on that. So,
it's like a very, very thin book it's called something like, it's nothing.
I know what you mean. The Supreme Natural Laws.
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
Honestly, even if that was one person's life work, I'm like, that's life changing, and that's like a sort of after. It's like a breath for you.
Thank you. But I want to say, and your luminosity is off the charts, and your energy and your light is so brilliant. And I want to point out to everyone watching that when they see that, it's because you have clarity. It's not because you're filled up with stuff or you have all these ideas you're trying to keep in your head. It's because you've emptied them all out. And you've become a receiver. Your antenna is clear, the channel you just described. And so, if people are in admiration of the light they see when they look at you, it's a perfect example of the brilliancy comes from the clarity. Mm-hmm. And clarity is won through the practice of recapitulation and emptying, doing all these things. But there's no end to your ability to contain light. When you're emptied and you're allowing these higher forces, let me put it better, the infinite intelligence that designed us to be a vessel for this earth life. Let's maybe think that they had a better plan in mind, and let that energy come in, or let that higher, the supreme force. Everyone has a different way of hearing it that works for them. So I'd like to use lots of different terms, whether it's God or supreme source. But the all that is Holy Spirit, whatever works for you, for that to bring its glory, so that we can truly be here and be alive. And then the addictions, all these things, they fall to the wayside. They're not the things that most people get nervous about doing this work around. Actually, they just go as you do the work. So it can be intimidating, but when you're actually practicing the principles and applying them, it no longer becomes an issue.
It's really no white knuckling at all. And I'm sure people say this to you all the time. You're so disciplined, and it's really not, that's not even something you've ever, I mean, you're devoted, right? You're connected to something deeper that keeps you going, but there's no white knuckling here. And your body just tells you when you're ready for the next level. And it's so beautiful because you let your body be in charge, and you're just in service to, God coming through it. I mean, I could go on and on and on with you, because you're just connecting to your energy. Just reminds me of, like, there's enough of us who are striving to believe in something different and better for ourselves and for everyone else. And I think if we give ourselves the bravery of being one of the people that, experiments with this other way, then we can all get there together. So I'm so deeply grateful for you being on here. And I would love for you to just share some of the things where people can find you. I mean, we'll put everything in the show notes, because every single one of your books is, life-changing. Every single one of your online courses is life-changing. Your app is fantastic, but just give people, like, where's most of your energy going right now?
Thank you, Jenna. So the majority of everything I'm putting out there for that's like the depth of the knowledge is going into the Pure Power app, and that and everyone can find me on Instagram, Natalia Rose Institute, and then of course the website is nataliarose.com, which is easy enough to find. But the app is where, like, for ongoing cleanses, courses, twice a month there's the live Zooms, and those are like courses. So there's a concentration of knowledge, and that would
Like the hormone one I spoke about.
That's exactly right.
That was your research. It's like a very specific, new angles, different perspectives. You're always just taking it higher. And oh my gosh, of course, we have to talk about the Enlightener, because that's another life-changing. So when we were talking about colon irrigation and how that's such an important part of the work, it being the shower, I'm sure a lot of people know about the fact that you can do enemas, and people know that you can do colonics. But you've come up with this compound hybrid that you literally invented, that allows people to do it themselves more often, deeper, how much they need, take care of their own dosage. So how would you describe the Enlightener to someone who has never heard of one before? And it's the best, by the way, it's the best name ever.
Thank you. Well, we do become enlightened when all this waste leaves, so it's lighter. So basically, it's irrigation, water entering the large intestine so that this waste can be released, and it's a way, when the penny drops and you realize just how much waste is in the body, you want to start removing it to keep up, to the soap and the water keeping up with each other. Mm-hmm. So daily green juices are going to awaken this waste nice and rapidly, but if you don't get it out of the body, it's going to resettle. So we want to remove it as it's being awakened, and that's what the Enlightener will do. Mm-hmm. It will really remove all the readied waste in the large intestine, whereas your typical enema, first of all, you have to lie down and then get up, and then lie down and get up, and it's this device is simultaneous flow. So you're receiving the water and releasing the waste simultaneously. There's no up and down, and it just enables so much waste to leave the body that the relief and this getting the change, the upgrades to your physiology will happen so much more rapidly. And the great thing is, you don't, as much as I'm the first person to say, colon hydrotherapists, God bless them, thank goodness they're out there. And in a perfect world, a person would have a few sessions with a colon hydrotherapist first, just so they could relax, have the waste removed, and know that it's being tended to professionally. But eventually, when you realize just how much waste there is, you realize you don't actually want to be making appointments all the time. You don't want to have to be driving somewhere. You don't want to have to worry about timetables. You can do it whenever you want, whenever you need to, and it's, you can travel with it and everything. So, we're talking about a lifestyle here, a lifestyle that will enable us to get to that state of being that we've been describing. And that all comes down to, the name of the game is how much waste can you remove? Because it's the waste that's caused the problem. So the removal of the waste is going to enable the body to regenerate.
And essentially, I mean, it's so easy. It's basically 2 tubes and a little bit of apparatus, and it, goes into a bag, but you just set it up in your bathroom and you can cleanse your own colon in a very, very sort of effortless way. You could be listening to a podcast as you do it, or watching a video on YouTube, as I often do. And you just do it in your own comfort of your own home and whenever you want. So it really is such a freedom-giving device that you've now given people as an option to connect to this feeling of levity without depending on something else. So anyway, we'll put all the links for all this different stuff in the show notes of this episode. But thank you so much for being on. And I'm gonna just have to say, you'll have to come on again, because this was just so fantastic, and I'm just so grateful for you.
Jenna, thank you. I feel the same, and it was so much fun to talk about these things with you, especially since I know that you live them and love them, and it's just it's a real joy to share this with everyone and your listeners. So thank you so much for having me, and
thank you.
Blessing.